There are a number of things that come to mind. One is that the question, what is a classic? What makes a work of fiction or philosophy or just art a classic? And a lot of people have grappled with this, and it seems that the consensus boils down to a classic, the notion that a classic is a work that people continue to find meaningful a long time after it was written or created, which is just kind of a very basic notion. That is, there are some works that generation after generation have proved their capacity to illuminate our own humanity, have proved their capacity to enrich and give depth to our own experience of our lives. And so that is a kind of, I don't know, a kind of empirical, a kind of historical proof of what works those are. And of course, it's a very loose proof, because it means, sometimes works are rediscovered. There are sometimes works that go through 200-300 years of incredible popularity and significance, and then kind of die out, and then they return, right? So it gives you a loose definition, but some of the things that those works have in common include what we discussed, the capacity to transcend their individual circumstances and speak to a broader notion of humanity. They have a certain complexity that makes them irreducible to ideological manipulation. That is, they have a complexity that makes them multifaceted. They have the fundamental capacity to, as I said, illuminate questions that are broadly human. These works are the works through which we learn the meaning of our own humanity. These are works that encourage us and equip us to become more fully ourselves. Right. Those are the works that have a claim to lie at the center of a liberal arts education. One more point, which has to do with commonality. Part of what's special about the Columbia core curriculum is that all of the students, and Columbia is a fairly diverse student group, that is diverse socioeconomically, not as diverse as I wish it was, but still pretty diverse, especially compared to very elite institutions. It's diverse socioeconomically, culturally, racially, religious background, national background. You get all of those students reading the same books that are trying to grapple with fundamental human questions. And you put students reading those books, grappling with fundamental human questions in the same room to talk about the same text. And it is just an extraordinary intellectual experience. It's an extraordinary social experience, because, I always think that is the place where we can realize the promise of diversity, right? We don't just want a campus that is filled with many different kinds of people. We want a campus that is filled with many different kinds of people who then interact and mingle around their human commonality. And that's what the classroom, the liberal arts classroom, provides around these nodes of humanity that the texts are.
Right. I think, to build on what you're saying, I think what happened to me, maybe what happened to you, what happens to the students that we've worked with, is that our own conscience, our own deep subjectivity grows by encountering these works from the past. But those works from the past become a part of our identity. They pass back into our conscience, into our notion of ourselves, not in a way, as I said, that eradicates our individuality, but rather expands our identity in order to be able to find modes of connecting to other people. So we become more truly ourselves and in our totality as human beings by encountering these works, at the same time that we learn how to encounter other human persons who are in some ways objectively different from us, right? They're separate from us, but also have within them that core of a human conscience and a human identity. So I think it's important to not, when you're talking about liberal arts education and privilege and class, just simply to make the distinction that one's social location, whether that's an advantaged one or a disadvantaged one, is not deterministic of one's moral conscience. Mm-hmm. And once you've made that distinction, you can see that regardless of the social position from where one comes or where one is headed, there is a deeper element to our humanity. And we never, what's the point of education if we're completely determined by our social surroundings and can never get out? This is the danger you were talking about.
Yeah.
So it's by encountering these texts that we actually are able to have more human interactions with other people, because our own conscience has been expanded, as has that of others.
Yeah. A liberal education, in my view, is premised on the notion of human freedom. It is the kind of education that is appropriate to a free individual, free subject. And that means that a liberal education presumes the capacity of self-transcendence. That is, a liberal education presumes the capacity in the student to overcome the limitations and the determinations of birth and class and gender and society.